Today, my guest is the founder of Ohio Valley Wrestling, the Nightmare, Danny Davis, the man that is responsible for me personally to fall in love with professional wrestling. Danny, how are you, sir?
Brian, I'm doing well, thank you. It was a very nice introduction there. I did not know that I was responsible for you to enjoy wrestling.
Yes, sir. You know, growing up in southern Indiana, I had the fortune of seeing Ohio Valley Wrestling back when Developmental wasn't a televised worldwide thing.
Right.
And it always felt more special seeing someone come up through OVW and then going to the main roster.
Well, that was the reason the Developmental came into play. They needed a place where the talent that they wanted to, have for their future business, they wanted to, get them some seasoning in the ring, and for whatever reason, they entrusted myself and Jim Cornette and Rip Rogers to do that.
So how did all of that come to be? Did you already have a school in place here in southern Indiana?
Yeah, actually, 1993, early March, I actually opened, the facility in Jeffersonville. It was on Watt Street at the time, and we outgrew that. And somewhere around, I think 1995, we moved over to Mechanic Street and in the what was known as the Quadrangle there. And it was around, I think sometime around 1998, Jim Cornette at the time was working for WWF at that time. And Jim was always a good friend of mine. And matter of fact, myself and Ken Wayne, back in the old Galaxian days, from the Memphis, Tennessee days, we were the first tag team that Jim Cornette ever managed. And so my relationship with Jim just grew from the early days until, he was working for WWF at the time, and we discussed having a, developmental territory. And he approached Jim Ross at the time, who was head of talent relations, and it was a good idea. And Jim was ready to leave Stamford, Connecticut at the time, and he relocated back to Louisville, which was his home. And he and I, and also Rick Rogers, made it happen.
Now, were you hesitant at all with doing something on this level, not knowing, what was expected, what they wanted versus what you wanted to do?
Well, I met with one of the talent relations gentleman at the time. Who was, he was brotherly love. But anyway, it was Bruce Pritchard, and he came down and sat with me and basically, told me what WWE wanted from OVW. And believe it or not, it was a very minimal, requirement. They wanted a place to put their, new hires, in a ring and perform in front of, live audiences, no matter how small or how large, whatever. And so I was able to provide that. But believe it or not, the original agreement, they only wanted 2 wrestlers per year to leave OVW and come up to their, main stage. Which, I thought, well, that'll be, that's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
And so the requirements from WWF at that particular time were very minimal. It was a no-brainer, and they offered me a lot of money to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt that with myself there and Hustler Rip Rogers and Jim Cornette, I felt like there's no way that this could fail in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agreed to do it. So that's how it got started.
How was that early on, building with the talent? Now, the early talent that came in, were these some professional wrestlers, some were just athletes, or was it just random people they wanted to look at?
Yeah, some of these guys were people that they were looking at, but like some of the first crew that came in was, like Sylvester Turkai, Brian Keck, Robbie Dix at the time, and of course, John Cena, who was known as the Prototype at that time, and I think they brought him in from California because that's where he was at, I think, at the time, and and just a host of others. And one of the things I had to do was I had to send in talent reports on their progress on a weekly basis. And in the pro wrestling world, with guys, you don't see a lot of change within a week, but something I had to do, and I gave everybody pretty much, a fair assessment, and some more than others, and we obviously know the ones that went on to become mega stars, how that turned out for them. So.
Now, how long did you, when this agreement came to be, were you at Mechanic Street versus when did you guys make the decision you need a bigger space and you went down to 4400 Shepherdsville Road?
Well, I think we were at Mechanic Street for probably, I don't know, to be honest with you, I think it was around probably a year. Mm-hmm. Until Jim Ross came down and says, boys, we got to find a better facility, because if Vince McMahon comes down here and sees this facility, he's going to fire us all. Because but here's the thing. Anybody, this is just my opinion. Anybody can train in a facility that's like the Taj Mahal, mm-hmm. But it takes a special kind of individual to train in basically a garage environment. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I felt that training guys and females in a garage environment would tell me if they really wanted it or not. Mm-hmm. Now you put them in a Taj Mahal, which basically is what when we relocated to 4400 Shepherdsville Road in Louisville, it was a real nice facility. I mean, it was, and but I just felt that for someone who really had passion for the business, and someone who really wanted to, scratch and dig and make it work. I personally liked the garage environment, but I understood why we had to move. We're dealing with a publicly traded company, and we had to have a more visual appealing, facility. So
now, how
we made it happen.
How long, they said they originally wanted 2 people a year. How quickly did that change?
That changed when they realized that what we were doing and how fast we could get these guys ready. That's when they started saying, oh my, okay. I mean, their writers at the time were very good. Mm-hmm. And we had so many guys ready to come up there, but their writers did not have anything for them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like they couldn't write storylines for them because they were so heavily involved with whatever they were doing at the time. Mm-hmm. But we I think of the almost 10 years that OVW produced a lot of their talent, I don't know, I forget the number, maybe close to 150 guys and gals, went to WWE, and most of them went on to have very successful careers,
Mm-hmm.
and so I remember, and I'm getting off topic here, but I remember at one point I did the JR's podcast
Mm-hmm.
a few years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the questions he asked me was, how are you able to, get all these guys trained and ready? And because like at the time they had I think Deep South Wrestling, and not knocking anybody, because Jody Hamlin was a very good friend of mine. I used to call him Dad in the wrestling business. That's how close he and I were. But things weren't happening in the Deep South.
Mm-hmm.
And what it wasn't happening fast enough, I guess, to get talent up to the main stage. I think, and this is what I told JR. I said, what you may not realize is I had a training school that I started in '93, and for 6 years I trained like Doug Basham,
Mm-hmm.
Nick Dinsmore, Rob Conway, and these guys. I said, and Trailer Park Trash, and just a plethora of names there. But they had spent like 5 and 6 years already developing. They were ready to go, right? And what I was able to do within the training, regime, I would take and put an experienced guy in front of a WWE inexperienced guy. I'd put an experienced guy behind him. So they had someone, in front of them and behind them who could take care of them and put them in the right direction. And that, I honestly believe that was the reason we were able to develop, the Lesnars,
Mm-hmm.
and the Cenas and the Batistas and those guys, so quickly, because they were surrounded. No matter where they turned, they had experience
Mm-hmm.
right there behind. So, and JR thought that was quite impressive. Hey, and I did too.
Yeah.
Because it worked.
Yeah. Now, for a while, they had the HWA, and then they would come down and work with you guys and
Yes.
do your tapings together, basically. And
Yes.
so, how was working with Les Thatcher in that relationship? Because that was it seemed like a short-lived developmental program.
Yeah, it was. But Les was. I knew Les from the early years, and Les was a good guy. He was doing a good job. But they would come down, and what they would do is, they would take I think they would take a couple of television shows, a week or something. That's what they were doing, because he had a facility in Cincinnati, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And but I don't know much about it, because I only visited. Jim Cornette and I went up one time, and for something, and I don't know if that was a year or two deal for them,
Mm-hmm.
and I honestly, I don't know what happened there. It didn't last as long as I'm sure Les wanted it to, but I don't know I have no knowledge of why it went away.
So as OVW grew and they needed more trainers, who did you have a hand in selecting who would help train other people, or did WWE just send other people down to OVW and be like Al Snow or Lance Storm or whoever?
Those guys, well, once, so you're in the beginning, it was Rip and me,
Mm-hmm.
and JC and Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette took more, he took more time with the guys' interviews and the television aspect of it, and Rip and I did, the in-ring training with the talent. But at some point in the timeline escapes me, but at some point, they started sending guys from WWE down to OVW to assist, in the training, and also, when Rip stopped training on a daily basis, he was only able to train on the weekends. I think that's when they sent. I'm thinking it was Al Snow at first. To come down and train guys, like Monday through, I don't know, Thursday or Friday, whatever it was. And then Rip would do it on the weekends. And then Lance Storm came down, later also. So they sent several, they sent a lot of guys down to help out with training. And I think that was to, I don't know, whether it was, it was kind of an audit of what I, myself, and the other guys are doing, So, but that worked out well.
So when talent would go to TV and then they would send different talent to OVW, did they ever feel like the main roster talent, if they got sent back to OVW, how was their attitude or their spirits during this?
Well, let's take Paul White, Big Show, for instance. Oh man, and I'm going to tell you a story because and this really happened. Just I want you to know. Mark Henry was sitting down, and then Big Show was sitting down. This is when we were still on Mechanic Street, and those two guys, they had great attitudes, but the look on their face when they first walked in was like, oh my God, what's happened to me, and what many people don't know, and they're about to find out, is that I had to call Jim Ross every Friday and let him know how Big Show and Mark Henry were doing. This was a verbal conversation because they were two of their main guys up there, and they sent both of those guys down to OVW for me to lean out and get in shape. Okay. Now, Paul White, bless his heart, he ran so much in that old hot building that he used to go out front, and there was a tree stump out there that he would empty his stomach on. Okay, and it was real. I don't remember Mark Henry ever throwing up, but one of the things I had to do every Friday before I called Jim Ross, I had to put them in a vehicle and drive those guys over to Louisville to a health facility and get them on scales because I did not have scales that could weigh those guys. Okay? Well, one week, Big Show says, I ain't going. I said, nah, Paul, this is not going to make JR happy. I'm not going. Okay, so he didn't go. He missed weigh-in. He was fined a week's salary, and I'm going to tell you what that salary was. $22,500.
I wish I had that salary.
Now, would you miss a weigh?
No.
For that kind of salary?
No, sir.
You would not, would you? He never missed another one. Now, that number could fluctuate a little bit, but that was the Jim Ross didn't give me that number, but that was the rumored salary that he was fined. And but honestly, I never had an issue with Big Show. I never had an issue with Mark Henry. And I don't think anyone that came down from the main roster to get reseason or whatever. I don't think I really had any issue with anyone. You know, I I did everything I could to make everyone feel at home and comfortable, and I think I did a decent job because most of the guys always called me their road dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was their dad, and it kind of made me feel good because it made me feel like even though I was hard on them
Mm-hmm.
because I had to be, you know, in order to better them. It made me feel good, and all the ladies that come through there. I mean, I honestly had never experienced so much talent from the females. I mean, OVW was blessed during those
Mm-hmm.
days to have the quality of female talent, the quality of male talent that they had, and I thoroughly enjoyed those days
Mm-hmm.
until I didn't.
Now, when they would send certain people down to like do like the Summer Sizzler series, did you guys have a hand? Like when they sent Benoit down or the other rest, did you guys have a vision of who you wanted to see versus who, like just to see how they would do in the ring?
Well, see, we would incorporate. We would have the talent send interviews down
Mm-hmm.
during our, for our weekly television show, and then we would involve them in an angle, so to speak. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we would get pre-taped interviews from the talent that were coming down to set up the Sizzler series at Six Flags.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all meshed together. It was done right, and it was an easy thing. And Chris Benbaugh was one that he enjoyed coming down, and I have to tell you this, and this was from I think every one of the WWE talent that came down, even though they hadn't, they weren't someone who trained at OVW,
Mm-hmm.
but all the talent that came in. I had a check waiting on them, after the show. Every one of them gave the check back. They wouldn't take it. Now, that's
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't money equivalent to what their WWE salary,
Mm-hmm.
but it was what OVW could afford to pay. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they never took their money, and it was always. It made me feel good, not in a monetary sense,
Mm-hmm.
just as because they appreciated what myself and Rip and Jim Cornette were doing,
Mm-hmm.
for them.
So, did you request certain talents to come down for these events, or did they just tell you who they were going to send?
No, we requested a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but they also said, hey, how about this guy? They had obviously they had their input,
Mm-hmm.
and for the most part, we were able to I don't want to say cherry pick, but for the most part, we were able to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked out.
I'd say so. One of the things that I liked about OVW was you could either be paid to be there or pay to be there. And you got to sign, a lot of talent got signed by paying to go to OVW.
Yes. See, that's the thing. My wrestling school was back in the early days. You couldn't get into wrestling. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
nowadays the wrestling schools in every street corner. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not knocking anybody or anything, but a lot of those are run by individuals who don't have a real
Mm-hmm.
solid background in the business. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not knocking anyone, because I just don't do that. And I was fortunate enough to have a history in the business, and I don't know how much you really know about me, but Buddy, you know who Buddy Fuller is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Buddy Fuller broke me into business, and this was in the mid '70s,
Mm-hmm.
mid to late '70s, and he was old school, and the facility that I went to was an old farmhouse, and 14 of us guys who get down. I don't want to get off on that tangent because that's a long discussion, but it's a unique one. But the wrestling schools today, I don't know. It's just it just seems like there's just one on every street corner, and anyone who's trying to get in. This is an old guy who liked old school wrestling. You know, it's his point of view. And again, I'm not knocking anyone. I just think that to learn the business the way it should be learned, you got to have someone who's been there, who's done it, and not just said they've done it, but can back it up and you know, and teach someone the right way. Because look, safety is a big thing, you know, with the talent. Because this day and age, you know, a lot of guys do the high flying stuff that I never did do, and I would never ask anyone to do it because I just thought that you know, to me that was too much. That'll tell you my way of thinking. I think that I think as we all grew in the business, some of us, you know, were able to mature in the way that WWE wanted. Didn't necessarily like it, but if I wanted to be a part of the program, you know, you had to do what the people who were paying you to do. And some of us accepted it, and some of us didn't. You know, and that's just the way it is. That's the way it is with anything, I think.
That's true. How hard was it to go to bat for those people that were paying to be there that you thought deserved a developmental deal?
It was not hard at all, because you can ask any one of those talent, and especially a lot of the female talent, if I believed in them, if I thought that they had what it took to be on the WWE main roster, I fought. And buddy, I fought for them. And I would bring them up every opportunity I could get, you know, within conversation of, you know, John Laurinaitis and or, you know, whoever else. You know, it was not hard for me to say, hey, you need to give this guy a chance, and, you know, and whatnot, or this girl a chance. And let's just take Beth Phoenix, you know, for as an example. Beth was she was not heavy set, but she was the beefy girl. But she was in shape because she was an amateur wrestler, you know. And I remember, you know, trying to get, you know, Laurinaitis to, you know, give her an opportunity. Well, you know, she needs to lean out. Okay, so we got her to lean out. Well, she's too lean. She needs to do this. But it was just silly things back and forth, things like that. And the sheer determination that she had, and she would not give up. Whatever they wanted, she did, even though, however, I felt that it was just nonsense, you know, because let me tell you, Beth Phoenix, the first time she came to OVW, she impressed me because of her background. Like I said, she was an amateur wrestler. And, buddy, I had her with two guys in my ring, and I had her to do 5 minutes of this guy and 5 minutes of the other guy, basically amateur wrestling, and she wore them out. And she gave my respect right then, and I kept an eye on her in her developing stage of, you know, learning the business, and I had many conversations with her and explaining how if she made it to the main roster, what was going to happen and how it all. And after she got up there and spent a couple of years, she told me, she says, everything you told me came true, and she says, I want to thank you for being honest with me. And it made me feel good, you know. Made me feel good. So, you know.
Dealing with developmental is a lot of emotion, you know, whether they get signed or released. Getting signed, getting released. How is it dealing with that? Like rewarding someone for their hard work or having, if someone was released, was that a conversation you had to have, or is that a conversation where the office would call?
It was both, because I had to. This was hard because Sylvester Turkai, who I thought had a lot of talent, he was a big 6'8", close to 300 pounds, and Brian Kay, he was an amateur wrestler, and I remember for whatever reason I was tasked with giving them their termination, and I did that in the basement of my home in Louisville at the time, because once or twice a week I would have a group of guys and girls come over to my house. I had a big basement, and I had 100 VCRs set up there. I had a studio in my basement, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and we used to watch videos and we'd critique their matches, and that was one of the learning tools, and for whatever reason, I was tasked with giving them their walking papers, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, that was hard for me to do, because I knew firsthand how much hard work
Mm-hmm.
and how much effort they put into their craft, but at the end of the day, if the boss says,
Mm-hmm.
"Man, we don't want you," no matter what. And so, I felt that I was understanding and gentle and caring about it, and tried to explain it in a way that and they were the first two that I actually had to give that
Mm-hmm.
the walking papers too. So it was a difficult thing for me to do, but I managed to get through it, and I didn't get beat up. So I guess that's a good thing.
One thing I always liked was, if a talent was released, normally I was there one night when Seth Skyfire got released. He you guys still booked him to come out. I think it was maybe the next day when you guys were taping, and like Seth got to say goodbye. Seth got
Right.
to perform. They knew he was released. I always thought that was a kind gesture on behalf of you guys, because OVW, that whole audience, that whole building, it's a family atmosphere.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all intentional. And see what most people don't realize is that behind the scenes, I fought with WWE a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. Because and Jim Cornette did too. I mean, the amount of energy that we used in dealing with all the behind the scenes, things. Their attorneys used to call me and tell me, "Well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't play this, but you can't." But man, and Jimmy and I were just, we're going crazy, because
Mm-hmm.
we couldn't understand, what what WWF at the time, I think, forgot was, I had a company before them, and all of my guys and whatnot were OVW guys. Well, see, they thought that they owned the rights to the OVW television show. Surprise! They didn't. I did, and so, that was by design.
Mm-hmm.
And them trying to tell me how to run my television show, even though their talent was on there, but for the most part, their talent was, there wasn't as many of their talent as it was OVW talent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they felt like now this was not during the Jim Ross days. When Jim Ross was head of talent relations, we had the absolute smoothest
Mm-hmm.
working relationship that any company could have. Pardon me. And when that changed, when Laurinaitis took over that position, that changed, and it changed a lot. I personally didn't have any beef with Laurinaitis. I think he and Jim Cornette, butted heads a lot, but rightfully so,
Mm-hmm.
because some of the freedom of what we were doing were being taken away from us, and we could not produce talent in the way that we were used to producing talent.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they were taking away a proven, successful training regimen, into something else that we just totally disagreed with. And you know, once that starts to happen, things start chipping away, you know, and things start to crumble, and you know, one thing leads to another, and then before you know it, Jim Cornette is out.
Mm-hmm.
And I had I said, well, gee, what do I do here? Do I keep this up? Do you know what, you know? And so, you know, it just, I mean, the politics of the behind the scenes relationship with OVW and WWE, you know, obviously it deteriorated over time. And after about 9 years, well, it was actually February the 7th, 2008. John Laurinaitis and someone came down, Ty, what's his name, and he said that they're moving their developmental to Tampa, Florida, and we were out at there's a Mexican restaurant close to OVW there, and I can't even remember the name of it. But we were there, and I put my hand on Laurinaitis' shoulders, and I said, "Thank you, I can now breathe." So he was like, "What? Don't you have any?" No questions. You know, so it was like, you know, it was kind of an, you know, I expected it, but I didn't expect it, and it just, you know, hey, we just go separate ways, you know. And for 10 years after that, I ran it. It almost broke me, Brian, because keeping that thing running, especially in the manner that, you know, we had it while WWE was subsidizing OVW. Well, that money went away, and the rest of it basically came out of my pocket, you know, and it was a hard road to hoe for 10 years, and I mean, there's a lot of struggling there, and but it got, you know, it got, when I handed it over to Al and his guys, it was doing real well, and so I have not regretted, you know, getting out of the business. You know, because you know, I spent 42 years in the industry, and I felt like I'd contributed all I could contribute, you know, and I think it was just time for me to walk away. Just time for me to walk away.
Outside looking in, when all that took place in 2008, I always felt like, because it kind of repeated itself again a couple years ago, that wasn't Laurinaitis' baby, that was Jim Ross's baby. So he didn't want to take over. He wanted his own thing, his own crew, his own training staff. That's how I viewed it, was that, you know, his formula needed to be more successful than Jim Ross's formula.
Yeah.
And then moved it.
Yeah. Well, you see, but the thing is, they're the ones paying the bills.
Yeah.
So you gotta, I guess, you know, I mean, even though I butted heads when I had to, I mean, it's, I think if they had just left it alone and let us do what we had done previous years, and because, I mean, you know, I think OVW had a proven track record, and I don't think that any other training facility has lived up to that. I mean, now don't get me wrong. The facility over in Orlando is great, you know, and you know, and they have a lot of good trainers over there, and their thing is completely different now, you know, and it's from what I understand is doing well, and I'm happy for them. I'm happy for that, and happy for all the talent that's part of it. But when you look back, of all the training facilities that did business with WWF/WWE, every one of them folded. Every one of them went out of the business except one, and that was OVW. And it was my goal to not let them shut me down, even if it meant spending my retirement money, spending every penny I had. You know, I put myself in financial jeopardy. but it was because I still had love for the business, and I wanted to have OVW as something, a standalone, as something that WWE could not put out of business. And while I had it, that's the way it was, and it turned out well. Now I couldn't tell you. I don't know, because I don't follow wrestling any longer, and it's not because I don't like this or I don't like that. It's just I ran my course with it, and when my wife Julie and I relocated to Florida, I enjoy retired life. I enjoy not having the stress of my phone ringing at 3:00 in the morning. Danny, I had a wreck and I totaled your ring truck and everything. I don't miss any of that. You know what I mean? And I guess I can say I got out at the right time. I guess I don't know.
Well, speaking of retirement, it's John Cena's final year.
Say it again?
It's John Cena's final year in professional wrestling.
Okay. I did not know that.
Cena announced a couple months ago that 2025 is his last year as an in-ring performer. How was it working with John Cena, developing John Cena?
I tell you what, it's probably the most, the easiest of any talent. The first day that I met Cena, he came into the Mechanic Street facility. First time I met him, 5 minutes after conversation, I knew that he was low maintenance. I knew that he was, he was going to be no problem, because he came in a week early, found an apartment, found his gym to work out, and got himself set up. So I did not have to babysit him in any way, shape, form, or fashion. There was one time that he did give OVW me a lot of trouble, and it was a personal thing, but it's something that I can't talk about. And but other than that, but it wasn't anything between he and I. It was just someone else, and we got over it. So he got moved up and got out of the environment. So
now, when he got moved up, he said in other interviews and stuff that he almost got let go. Was that a struggle, you think, for him to do that? Because we almost didn't get to have John Cena.
Right, because for whatever reason, they did not like his in-ring material or whatnot, And the thing that saved him was his ability to rap, his ability to have his mic skills were far better than a lot of the main eventers up there. And I guess it was on a plane or coming back somewhere, and he did something, and it caught Stephanie's eye, and that's what kept his job. That's exactly what did it.
Is there any advice for John Cena as he enters retirement?
Oh, wow. Well, the thing is, in his shoes, don't look back in any negative fashion whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I think he's a completely positive guy. I haven't spoken to him in, I guess, a couple of years. Back when I turned 70, 2 years ago, I had a whole, Nick Dinsmore set it up. I had a whole bunch of guys to send me a video, happy birthday, and the very last one was Cena. He was actually on location somewhere doing a movie, and he sent me a video message wishing me happy birthday, and that made me feel good, But I think for him, just he's done so well. Probably, he's probably done more than the others, including Brock and Randy and all those guys. So I think maybe he's he's going to be happy no matter what he does. And I don't think that he will, you know, be a couch potato or anything like that because he never has been. He never has been. But I think that whatever he chooses to do after his official retirement from pro wrestling, I think it will be obviously in the movies somehow or something else. But he'll continue to thrive and I hope live a long, happy, healthy life.
Working with what they call the Big Four, Cena, Lesnar, Orton, Batista, how was it developing and working with those four, I guess, pillars of OVW that came through developmental? Right. Was there any? Go ahead. Did they view them as future stars?
Nobody really gave us trouble. But it's like Randy Orton grew up in a wrestling family, right? Fourth generation wrestler, right? And he was kind of predisposed of we do it this way, and I have absolutely nothing against that. And but Randy and I got along great. We never had no problem. Lesnar and I had absolutely no problems. He and I still talk today. Okay, we were close, and Cena and I talked for years. And like I said, the last time I heard from him was a couple of years ago, and I understand that because once you reach these guys and where they're at nowadays in their lives, it's a different ballgame. Now, Batista and I never had any issues, no problems or whatsoever, except when he got out to WWE, he made the comment somewhere, so I'm told, that he didn't learn anything in OVW, and that took me back. I was like, how could you say that when everybody else did, And I think it was somebody just putting ideas in his head up there that somebody who wasn't a fan of OVW, and again, I never had any issues with Batista, none whatsoever. But we never really talked after he left, and so maybe he didn't like the way I did things. I don't know. I don't think so. But Dave was the first time I saw him and talked to him. I told Jim Ross he's a WrestleMania moment waiting to happen. Same thing, and I told him about Brock. I did not say it about Cena, but what happened there? Hello. Okay, so I was puzzled at why Dave would have made a comment like he didn't learn anything, when he was taught right alongside everybody else, and so many did. But didn't hurt my feelings or anything like that, But working with those four, like you said, the pillar of OVW was it was really an honor for me to be involved in their learning, and knowing that each of them took something from OVW and was able to magnify it in WWE and become such household names and major stars. I mean, to me it's a real good feeling to know that.
See, my pillars were always Conway, Dinsmore, Fashions. That to me.
Exactly.
So exactly. There was like a specific time frame I remember where they would just call people up, and if it didn't work, release, we'll bring up the next one. Boom, boom, boom. But like, how frustrating was that for you guys in OVW?
It was really frustrating, especially if they did that to someone who was involved in an angle on our television show. You know, for instance, my nephew, Doug Basham, okay, so they called him up, did something to him over the weekend, but they shaved his head. Well, they, you know, and he come back, Jim Cornette and I were like, what happened? And Laurinaitis apparently just did it as a rib. Well, that rib didn't go with Cornette, and you know, and it shouldn't have, because he's a major player on our television show, and he comes back with a complete different look just for, you know, to push somebody's buttons. So it was little things like that, you know, happened a lot, and it drove Jim Cornette, and rightfully so, crazy, because they just messed with him right and left, and they did, you know, and it's like, well, when I say him, I meant us, but it really got to JC, you know, as it should have, you know, because you still do that, you know, and that was always a difficult thing. Every time they'd say, okay, well, let's send Nick up for this, we were like, no, what are we going to do now? Because how's he going to come back? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? So when they made Nick Eugene, you know, Eric Bischoff's cousin or whatever, that really went through Cornette, because, you know, the relationship from Bischoff and Cornette, you know, none of that, I don't think any of that's good. But it just to me, it seemed like it was just a way to push Cornette's button, you know. That, you know, I mean, that's what it seemed to me. I don't know if that was the case or not, but it sure seemed that way, Brian. It sure seemed that way.
Was there any talents that you thought that should have done more, or they should have done more with, because they had money written all over them?
Now say that again. What do you mean?
Do you feel like a lot of talent came from OVW, and when they put them on the main roster, that they should have just been a success, but they weren't? Is there specific talents you thought that they should have done a hell of a lot more with that they just didn't do?
Oh, Lord, yes. You know, pretty much all of them, because, see, our idea of drawing money and WWE's idea of drawing money were on the opposite end of the spectrum, you know? And so if their writers couldn't come up with something for these guys or gals, then, you know, they wouldn't use them. And it didn't make sense, because what they would not do, they would not take what we were doing with them on television in angles in OVW and use it up there. They would have to change somebody's name. They would have to do something, you know, completely different. Well, when you do that, the guys and girls who have been training for a year doing this one way, well, they had to start over. Well, they didn't start over in the developmental. They started over on the main, you know, on the main show. And then what happens? They didn't do it. They couldn't do it, so they got released. Well, see, it was stupid. We asked many times, hey, what idea do you writers have? We'll start that here and let them polish this idea, and then when they get up there and you do it, it's going to work. Well, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do it. Now, and that's something I never understood. Why would you not do that? You know what I mean? It didn't make any sense, Brian. To this day, it still don't make sense.
No. Is there any particular OVW memories that stand out more than others for you?
Wow. September 11th, 2001, the terrorist attacks. We were taping the show, and it's just, you know, we brought everybody out into the ring before, you know, before anybody ever, you know, thought about anything. And, you know, the guys in Cornette led a promo and talked about how, you know, how the country would come together and everything like that. And so that right there was the biggest thing for me. I mean, it was a powerful moment because a tragedy had happened to for this country, and to remove ourselves from what we were doing and to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just something that stuck with me. Now, as far as, you know, wrestling, or, you know, I think when, I don't remember when it was, but I remember Mike Mondo and Johnny Jeter were doing something. I came out to the ring. I was wearing a suit or something. I can't remember. And we got involved. We were setting up an angle for Six Flags. And so I remember them two trying to. They were beating me up pretty good and trying to get me off my feet. Well, I wouldn't go until they made me go. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it was so believable. It was so real, because it was. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And Jeter and Mondo always talked about that. It was a good thing. And so that's one of the things that really, you know, that really stood out.
Working with Jim Cornette.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that's just, you know, anybody that knows JC,
Mm-hmm.
we were taping a show on Mechanic Street, and it was during, and we taped it live to tape. And then when we had like a 5-minute dark segment, whatever, we'd have a match out there, whatever. Well, something had happened. I'm in here, you know, keeping the time and whatnot. And the next thing I know, I hear a noise. I turn around, and my office desk that had a glass top on it was turned upside down, and the drawers were all spilled out. And I looked, and there's Jim Cornette, and he and I'm like, okay, you know, I mean, it didn't affect me none whatsoever, because I know Jimmy, you know, I know Jimmy. Yeah. So come to find out, after the show was over and whatnot, he didn't even remember doing that. he got hyped up about something, you know, something that didn't go right or whatever. He came in and he grabbed my desk, flipped it upside down, and the desk was not light, you know. It was funny. It was funny. And but like I said, I've known Jimmy, probably known Jimmy 38, 39 years. So he and I are still friends,
mm-hmm.
and it's we don't talk as much as we used to, but we've never had a disagreement really, or
mm-hmm.
anything that would cause any outburst on either side.
How about working with Rip Rogers?
Rip is and again, I've known Rip probably 38, 39 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Rip is an odd cookie, and he'll tell you he's odd. But then again, I'm an odd cookie, and Jimmy odd cookie. I mean, we're different. My feelings for Rip are plain and simple. I don't care how he feels about me or anything like that. But I love Rip to this day. It's like I love Jim Cornette. Mm-hmm. I'd take a bullet for each. If I had to, I'd take a bullet for each of those guys, no matter what. I think both of those guys, Jim Cornette, Hustler Rip Rogers, are probably, this is in my view, two of the most intelligent living examples of what pro wrestling once was and what it should be today. Mm-hmm. I mean, Rip could train anybody. I mean, he was gifted, and I'm sure he still is. I haven't spoken to Rip in a long time. I don't know what he's doing, but I hope that he's doing well, and I just I have nothing but the utmost respect for both of those guys.
If you had, so say that you started a school today, who would you recruit for trainers today?
Oh my God!
With all the plethora of talent you've worked with, you've trained, you've developed, you've single-handedly, you, Rip, and Cornette have molded what the WWE is today. Had it not been for you three, there wouldn't be a PC. There wouldn't have been the ruthless aggression era, and I truly mean that. None of that would have happened if you three didn't succeed.
Right. I honestly, if it could happen, and I don't know that either would be, but if we were asked to do something like that again, if I was asked, I would honestly choose Rip. I would choose Jimmy, and I would have Rob Conway. I'd have my nephew, not because of nepotism, but nephew Doug Basham, and Nick Dinsmore as trainers, and leave us alone. Let us do our thing for developing the business, the guys and gals that we know how they should be trained. Let us do that, and you would have a successful company. Mm-hmm. Because I think each of us knows our own strengths and weaknesses when it comes to that. And one of the things, we've never stepped on each other's toes in regards to that. In other words, I would never tell Jim Cornette how to write a television show. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, even though I could, because I did for a while. But that we all understood our strengths and our weaknesses, and we never stepped our toes into someone else's business. And I think that was one of the reasons OVW was also successful, mm-hmm. because of that. But those are the guys I would choose. Mm-hmm. Bottom line.
That's a perfect crew.
I think so. I mean, it's something that I feel like it could honestly be done again. Mm-hmm. It really could. As long as I wouldn't have to leave Florida. Hey, I don't know. I'm not patting myself on the back in any way because I had no clue. But do you know that if it wasn't for me, there would never have been a Stone Cold Steve Austin?
I did not.
He and I used to travel all the time back in the old USWA days. Mm-hmm. And he was at the point where he was a heel and he wasn't making any money, but he was making $40 a night, I think, and he was starving to death. And so one night in Memphis, Tennessee, he came to me and told me, he said, I think I'm going back to Texas. I told him, I said, and he said, I'm going to do something else. And I said, Steve, I don't think you should do that. I said, I know how hard it is. I said, because I can't pinpoint it. I said, but there's something about you that's different than anybody else. I said, I can't put my finger on it. And I did not know what that was. But I knew he had the it factor. I knew that he had something. And Lord, did he have something, Mm-hmm. I just didn't know what it was, at the time. But apparently he listened to me, and he didn't get out of the business. And I don't know if this was before or after. He and I, we used to travel on Waylon Jennings' tour bus from Memphis, Tennessee to Dallas, Texas, to the Sportatorium. And we were doing some ESPN tapings at the time. And he and I was working with him that night. He came in, he says, hey, what do you want to do tonight, boss? I said, I don't know. I said, you're calling it. He said, what? I said, you're calling it. And I later found out that I was the first guy to ever let him call a match, because he had never done that. And he said, well, what if I screw up? And I said, I'll fix it. Just like that, I'll fix it. So he in one of his books, he mentioned me, and he made me feel good that he remembered that. So just something else to add to my BS life, I guess.
Since 2008, has there been any contact with you in WWE?
Oh yes, Lord, yes. For probably a couple of years after that, Laurinaitis used to come down to seminars we would hold, and he was scout talent. Mm-hmm. I mean, he didn't. The only thing they cut out basically was the financial support. You know what I mean? And running OVW at that time in that facility, buddy, it was a lot of money. A lot of money to keep those doors open, and that's the only thing that basically changed. Because we had a good working relationship with most everybody in WWE, in talent relations at the time, and but I forget at what point. I think it was when they opened up the Orlando facility. That's when things I think stopped. We stopped any real communication, so to speak. But they came down and like I said, they looked at some guys from our seminars, and they actually hired a few guys from that. So,
how does it feel that OVW's legacy is still going strong today? It's something you created. It's still going all these years later.
Well, then I guess that's something good that I like to hear. I had hoped that it would, because that was my intent. I put a lot of money into it. Well, I spent my entire retirement money, and it's didn't make my life happy at all. And we from time to time we struggle. That's just hey, it's like everybody else. Life gets in the way, and that's just the way it is. But I'm really glad to know that I was able to keep the business going. That Al and those guys that are Matt Jones and those guys that are involved in it now, that it's still going. I hope they get in touch with me soon, because they still owe me a little money, and I'm happy that it's still there, and I hope that it can continue. I really do.
Being in Florida, would you be open to guest coaching at the Performance Center?
I have done that already. So I did that back in August of 2019, and I did it one time, and I enjoyed it. I really did, but I just so many things that I just that are different for me, and I didn't go back. I think I could have. Yeah, I know I could have, but I didn't want to. I wanted to do something else. And that something else was ride my Harley and just enjoy the time I have left on this earth. That's it. So about twice a year I ride my Harley up to Indiana. So that's basically how I devote my time now, Brian.
Okay. One final question for you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If you had any advice for anybody getting into professional wrestling, what would it be?
That's a pretty good question. Getting into the business this day and age is different, I think. But the advice I would give to anyone, male or female, is if you're not getting in the business directly with WWE, you're getting into the business with someone who says they can train you, they can make you a star, run the other way. Nobody can make you a star except you. And the individual that is teaching you, who says they're going to teach you, do your due diligence. Make sure that individual has a proven track record in the industry that can back up what he's saying. And don't let anyone take your money, because there are people out there who will do that. And don't fall victim to that. I mean, no one can guarantee you anything, So just know that if you find someone that you can trust, know that it will probably be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. Seriously, I've had professional football players come to OVW back in the day and couldn't last a week because it's a complete different deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so just do your due diligence and make sure that the individual that you are going to have train you on how to be a professional athlete, make sure they know what they're doing. And good luck.
Well, Danny, thank you for your time today. Thank you for what you've done for professional wrestling. No, I don't think anybody's accomplished more than what you've been able to do with reshaping what we view as professional wrestling today.
Yeah, well, that's very kind of you to say. And sorry it took me so long to do this, but I was scared of getting sucked back in.
Yeah.
Because wrestling, honestly, the entertainment industry is worse than any drug you can get hooked on. And thank God, I've never been hooked on any drugs.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing. And but the business is, I mean, it can just suck you back in real easy. And I'm trying to keep myself, at a distance, so that because I want to continue riding my Harley, and I just want to enjoy the wind splitting my face, and just that's what I want to do now, So hey, I got to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
So I understand that you know someone that I know.
Yes, sir.
There. Wow. So how do you know Terry and his lovely wife?
Terry is my barber. I was just there yesterday, and he.
Oh, cool! Yeah, your hair looks nice.
Thank you. He has. He's one of the people that's told me just be persistent with you and just keep reaching out, and eventually. He said, just keep bugging him. Just keep bugging Danny. Just keep doing it. And I said, okay.
Well, okay. Now, while you're sitting in the barber chair next time, you have a story to tell.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So his wife, who I actually worked with, my wife and I worked with at the hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
I gave her a nickname, and back in, and I don't know if he's ever told you or if she's ever told you, but I nicknamed her the Intimidator because Mary is she's about 6'1", 6'2". She's a big lady, big tall lady, but a sweetheart. And Terry, I think Terry's awesome. I think he's just awesome. But I named her Intimidator because when like some of the new hires would come in, they would be like looking up at Mary and it's like they were scared. So I gave her the nickname of Dale Earnhardt, the Intimidator. Anyway, tell Terry I said hello.
I will, sir.
Okay.
And if there's ever anything that I can do, please feel free to reach out.
I hope there's not, because if there is, it means I'm leaning towards something that I don't want to lean towards.
Well, next time I'm in Florida, you're up here, dinner on me.
I might ride up to that.
Yeah.